Frank Giavella with The Contending, here with the director of the exquisite, unsettling film, The Trial of Hein, which will be playing at Frameline. Welcome, Kai.
Thank you so much.
Congratulations. It's really it's an extraordinary film. It's a film that stays with you long after.
Thank you.
Uh,
Um,
I wanted to start by you debuted at the Berlinale and you also played new directors here in New York. How has the festival journey been for you so far?
Amazing. So far we are really blessed with a lot of festival acceptance, and I'm traveling a lot with the film, which is amazing. So I went to New York, I went to Sofia, to Gran Canaria, to Zurich. I'm gonna go to San Francisco to Frameline next month. I'm really excited about that. I showed a lot of my short films at Frameline, so it's kind of a bit of a homecoming for me. So that's really exciting.
It's been a while. I want to talk to you about that in a minute, but any word on a US release is what I wanted to ask.
Yeah, so we are releasing with Strand releasing is bringing the film to US theaters, and I'm really excited about that.
Fantastic. That's good to hear. So I know this is a very personal story for you. Can you tell me about how the script and the film all came together?
Actually, the idea goes back to a personal experience of mine. You know, I grew up in a small town in Germany in the 90s, and while I was growing up there, very often I felt like I couldn't really be myself. And I could only access parts of myself after I left this town and I went to a bigger city to study, and then I went to Berlin, and only then I could accept parts of myself that I couldn't accept before. And around that time, when I went back to my hometown, it always felt like, oh wow, this is a different life I lived there, and I could never go back to this life I lived here. And from this feeling, the idea of the film grew, and yeah, and I wanted to take my personal experience, but make it a universal one. I wanted to make it a parable, and this is how Trial of Hein came to be.
You know, it's interesting because when I visit my family in Sicily for an extended stay, I tend to become increasingly uncomfortable like as the weeks go by. Like I can't stay very long because there's so much, first of all, everybody knows your business, and there's so much pressure on you to fit in, to be what they expect you to be. So I really related to that part of the story.
Yeah, you know, that's the experience that we had already with the script, but also with the film, that a lot of people can find themselves in it, not just queer people or people with an LGBT background, but also a variety of people, because, you know, everyone who left their hometown and who left their home and is coming back is having feelings about it, and very often they're like mixed feelings, and it's just steers a lot of emotions and a lot of different lives that we live, and this is amazing that the film can um, find its audience and that people can find themselves in it.
Yeah, and that sense of belonging, and how instead of celebrating the uniqueness of every individual, which is what we should be doing, we want everybody to sort of fit into one mold, one way of thinking.
Yes, in a way. And you know, for me, that's also why I chose this place. You know, I wanted to have this island community in the middle of nowhere, also because I wanted it to have a universal character and I wanted it to be like a parable or a fairy tale. So I always thought that this place, it's kind of otherworldly, you know, it's at the end of the world, maybe even beyond, you know, it's not part of the world anymore. But in an isolated community like this, people really yeah, they become really one, you know, they become like really one community and one body, and that's what I was interested in, you know, to have this community that really becomes like one homogene body, and he comes back as a sort of a foreign body into this community.
Very much. And I'm sure you get this all the time, but a film that I kept thinking over and over again about is one of my all-time favorites, and that's Lars von Trier's Dogville. Not
Mine
just
too.
because of the, you too? Yeah.
Mine too. Of course, it's an homage to Dogville. You know, I love Dogville. I adore that film.
Yes, and it's not just because of the abstract set pieces, but the idea of the villagers not wanting to welcome in a stranger, how they treat them. There's so much there. It would be a great companion piece with the film.
Yes, you know, I was inspired very much by Dogville, obviously, and also by the parable-like approach that Dogville had, you know, to the story, also to the setting. But yeah, I was inspired by many things, you know, Dogville being one of them, but also Michael Haneke, The White Ribbon, Babette's Feast, you know, there were like 12 Angry Men, you know, even like the
Mhm.
courtroom dramas and stuff. You know, I was really inspired by a lot of films, and I watched all the films that I could, and I tried to get inspiration. Also in literature, you know, I was very much inspired by Dürrenmatt, you know. I don't know the English title actually, but there's, you know, Dürrenmatt, he has like all these parable-like stories also from people coming back to their hometown. And yeah, I was very much inspired by a lot of things.
I also love how you explore memory in the film because memory is such a tricky thing, and you're never sure. Like the whole gutting of the fish sequence is extraordinary in that respect because we rely on our memory, but our memory can be really fucked up a lot, and I think the film really messes with memory in a great way.
Yeah, you know, where that comes from is actually also a personal experience, you know, because when I later in life talked to my family or friends from back then when I was growing up, and I told them what I went through and what, you know, how my childhood was for me and my youth, you know, what I struggled with. They very often were surprised. They didn't know, you know, they didn't know what I went through because I didn't show it on the outside. I just kept it all inside. And I was so fascinated by that, you know, like how people can experience things differently, and how I felt was very different from what I showed on the outside. And this is what plays into the trial, you know, what is the true memory here? Is it what I felt, or is it what others perceived, you know? Yeah.
Kai, talk about casting, because in particular the three leads, but also the woman who plays the main judge, who I thought was absolutely extraordinary.
Amazing. I love all of them. You know, I'm so happy with the cast, and I have so much love for all of them. Because it was a tricky thing, you know, because we have like this old period language, you know, it's like an historic German language. It's not easy to portray, and it's not easy to make it believable and emotionally available for people, you know. And we saw that in casting, that a lot of people struggled with the language, and yeah, that plus the abstract setting and the world we move in, you know, it's like it's a very special thing. And we were very blessed in casting with the reactions we got to the script already. People really saw in the script already what a great story this is and what this could be. So we have actually very well-known German actors, even in the supporting parts. So the cast is actually quite well known in Germany. So we were very blessed that even that everyone wanted to take part in it, you know. And yeah, we did for the three leads. We did a long casting process, and we invited a lot of people. We did a lot of chemistry reads, and I'm just so happy with all of them. With Paul, you know, as our lead, and he's such a special presence, and you know, he portrays the character so amazingly, and he's just, you know, he puts a lot of his own history in the character, and you could feel it right away in casting, and yeah, so I'm just so happy with the cast.
Yeah, Philip too, I thought
Yes.
was absolutely wonderful. You know, most of his key scenes come later in the film, and I thought he was
Yes.
extraordinary.
You know, he was the first one from the leads that we actually cast. So he came in, he sat down, and he was Friedemann. You know, it was like I didn't need to do anything. You know, he was sitting down. He was like, oh my gosh, and that's where I also saw what what people can do with the language, how this language can work. It really was magic. When he came down, he sat down, he played one of the interrogation scenes from his trial day. And he was the character. So we cast him right away, and then we invited candidates for Hein to do a chemistry read with him, and that's where the chemistry was with Powell, and this is where it really worked, and you could see that this works perfectly. And with Greta, it was a longer process. We invited a lot of actresses for Greta, and Emilia came in having her own ideas on the character, something that I didn't even see on the page. So my natural response was first like, "Oh no, I don't know. I'm so protective of this character. I'm not sure." But in the end, what she gave to the character was it gave the character so much more. It made the character so much more three-dimensional, much more dimensions, and yeah. So I'm just in awe of her and of all of them. Yeah.
I want to talk about the love story at the heart of the piece, the queer layer, if you will, but I feel like it's relatable to anyone. You have your first love, and then we all think about going back sometimes to revisit that person. And in this case, it's really, really fascinating because they're very, very differing things that happen with the characters. Can you speak a little bit about that?
Yeah. So I I envisioned, what's the reason for Hein to come back, and it's this love that he could never let go, and it's only hinted at in the movie, but his time on the mainland, what actually happened there? Why is he coming back? For me, it was always that he never found his place on the mainland because he had unfinished business with the island, but also because he left his love over there, and so he could never really forget Friedemann, and he tried to live his life on the mainland, but he could never really find himself there. And then, so after 14 years, now being a bit older, being in his early 30s, looking back at his life, looking when was I really happy? It was actually with him. So he goes back to see what actually happened, and yeah, so obviously in these last 14 years, Friedemann lived a very different life and had a very different experience. And I always saw them as, both ends of the experience that you can have as a gay man. You can either, find yourself and live an open life and be open about it, or you can stay in the closet and, not be true to yourself and live a fake life, or live like a different kind of life in hiding. And I always saw these two at the end of this experience.
It's amazing. And I also love how Greta's son it's more than hinted at that he may also be somebody who one day is going to have to make that decision.
So I always saw Joost, the son of Greta, as a mirror of Hein. He's like our mirror of Hein's experience when Hein was young. So of course he's more sensitive, more sensible, and yeah, of course it's also someone that maybe doesn't fit in this community and maybe has a problem later, or already a problem in this community. But he was always like a mirror for the audience at what Hein's experience as a youngster and as a kid was on this island.
Speak a little bit, Kai, about how you work with your actors. Do you sit down and have conversations with them? Do you let them bring whatever they bring? What is your process like?
So what for me it was really important that we connect, that all of us connect, and so I had a 1 week of rehearsals. I called them rehearsals, but when we actually got there, I felt like it doesn't really make sense to rehearse the scenes actually. So what we really spent time on in this week together was just to connect. So it was really for me important that they connect with me, but also they connect with each other. So I spend a lot of time and energy on connecting exercises between them, and just a lot of talking about the script, because it's my story, and I know and it's a very symbolic. There's a lot of symbols in it, a lot of meanings, a lot of layers. So it was a lot of talking about every single detailed thing, what it means to me, what I mean here, what I mean with this sentence, what I mean with this. And so, yeah, just building this connection and building this foundation. So when you go into set and when you go on set, you have something to fall back to, and you have a strong bridge that you can, send the thoughts and the directions on, because they know how much this means to me and they know that I really know the story inside out. So there was a lot of trust already when we went into shooting, and it was just an amazing experience. Them bringing what their thoughts. For example, Julika, who plays the village leader, who is so amazing. She's such an intelligent person coming with her own thoughts. So every day on set, she came like, "Oh, I thought here about this," and we talked about it, and she brought a lot of intelligent thoughts and meaning to it. So it was very much a collaborative approach.
Did you find that in the editing room, the film changed quite a bit from the script, or did it remain very close to what you initially envisioned?
Um, it changed in the sense that the script was even longer and bigger. There were more scenes, so a lot of things got left on the editing room floor. But in general, no, it was the film. There was also not a lot of room for improvisation on set because the story is so built on all these different layers, and also the language made it quite impossible to improvise. Because this language is so precise and historic. And what actually changed in the editing room, and I had an amazing editor, Susanna Ocklitz. I edited all my short films with her. We have a very strong friendship and a very strong work relationship. And she's amazing because she creates this peaceful environment, because editing also can be very pressured, and you come from shooting and you're exhausted and you're so pressured with everything, and she creates this safe space where everything, all of this is outside, and it's just the two of us working on the edit. And what actually changed, for example, is the approach of the memories and how we approach the memories. Because in the script, it was written that when we're in the trial, we first hear the village's memory and we see the village's memory, and then we hear Hein and he tells his memory, and we see the whole memory again. And so this, what in editing we found, okay, we don't actually need this. We just need little snips. It makes much more sense, and it's much more exciting and interesting to stay with Hein in that moment and just see like little glimpses of his memory. So these things just develop in the editing room.
I know it's early in the year, but I really hope that this is a film that Germany will consider for submission for the Oscars.
Oh, I would hope, I would dream of that, But for now, I'm just so happy on the journey we're on, and that the film is getting so much attention, and that the people connect with it, and people want to show it on the festivals. So I'm really grateful for that.
Kai, are you working on anything new? Do you have any ideas that you're exploring right now?
I have a lot of ideas actually, and I have like all my ideas lined up for the films I want to do. But now it's just so busy, It's just so busy. I'm traveling so much for the festivals, and I worked so long on this script. The script took me like ages, so I really need like a quiet time to sit down and to work on the next script. And it's gonna take a while until, I feel like, okay, my life calmed down a bit and I can now focus on the next story.
Well, yeah, your short films, which I watched, It's Consuming and Golden, and they're both
Yeah.
terrific. They're very, very short, and it's taken you like in that time, do you feel like what's the question I want to ask here? You just needed to be ready to make this?
Yes. For sure, and it's like I don't know, I wanted to do films since I was 12 years old. I found this very early in my life. It was always my passion. I always knew that this is my path. But when you're really so passionate about something that means so much to you, you're also kind of afraid of it. And I was doing short films, and they were quite successful. But this step from short film to feature, it was really something I was like, oh, ooh, I don't know what's the right story, and what's a personal story, but also big enough to do it as your first feature. And this took me long, and then took me a long time, and then I ran away from it. I did another short, I did another music video, and I had the story in my mind, and I had, the story of him coming back and not being recognized and put on trial. And I wrote a bit, but then I did something else. And then what really helped was the pandemic, In the pandemic, everything, the whole world stood still. And I could just sit down and write it for myself, Everybody was sitting at home doing nothing anyway. So I could just write the script, and it really helped. It really helped me.
Well, Kai, it was worth the wait. I want to thank you for the film. I want to thank you for sitting down and chatting. And any word on when it's going to be released by Strand? Do we have a timeline yet?
No, I know. Actually, I don't know, but I'm gonna meet them. I'm gonna meet them in San Francisco when I'm there. So I hope I will know more then.
Okay, well, I'm very excited. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Frank. This was amazing.
Likewise.